For those who might follow my Showdown lives, you might have seen that I recently completed my goal of laddering to the top 500. Now, for a lot of players, that might not be a big deal, but for me, someone who is ranked in the mid 1400s after like 100 some battles, that's a pretty big jump in skill, if I might say so. When I started the series just 2 months ago, I would have been pretty stoked to hit 1500 elo, let alone 1700. And in making those Showdown lives, I found myself learning a lot of lessons, some of which were easier than others. So, with my goal of top 500 complete, I thought I'd share some of the things I learned from climbing the ladder with you to help you with your own play. For now, I boiled it down to 3 pieces of advice to help you ladder better. Tip number 1, play to learn, not to win. And wait, hold on. Before you roll your eyes at the cliche and leave, hear me out. I think most players in pretty much any competitive game will tell you that fixating on your win-loss rate is a pretty crappy mindset for improvement. What I mean by this tip goes a bit beyond that, so just give me a second to explain. If I were to compare an average ladder player to a pro competitive player dominating tournaments and league play every season, I could go on for a while about what makes them so different, because they're going to be night and day. But if I just had to compare a top 500 ladder player with a mid or low level ladder player, I really don't think the difference would be that significant. The level of plays, the team builds, the lead matchups, I found they're mostly the same no matter where on the ladder I am. There is a difference, but it's not as profound as you would think. At the end of the day, it's just game knowledge that separates the top from the rest. There are always new things to be learned on the ladder, and when you're trying to improve, your goal should be to act as a sponge and soak up as much of that new information as possible. Making use of the DT command and the calc command on Showdown are great ways to improve your knowledge. And I mention this all the time, but the most important knowledge you can have in competitive Pokemon is understanding how your Pokemon match up versus your opponents, which is why I try to change up my teams as little as possible. A good example of me learning these matchups actually occurred in a recent video of mine. I was certain that I had my opponent's Dragapult beat with my Zeraora. If it's Specs, I said, I outspeed it and kill it. If it's Scarfed, I can easily tank the Draco Meteor and kill it afterwards. It is Scarfed, but I definitely lived that. However, it wasn't until my opponent cussed me out that I realized that my Zera was totally supposed to die there, and that in most cases, it does lose that 1v1. Hold on. Never mind. I'm totally wrong. I can't believe it does that much damage. So now if I run into that same matchup in the future, I know that I gotta rely on my Bisharp as the late game cleaner, not the Zeraora. The more knowledge you have in Pokemon, the more weapons you have versus your opponent. So your goal when you're playing shouldn't be to win, but to acquire as many of these weapons as possible. Number 2, stop changing your team so much. For this tip, I'm gonna tell a quick story. When I first started to get into Pokemon Showdown about 2 to 3 years ago, all I wanted to play was Black and White Overused. It was my favorite game, I thought it had the most fun meta, yada yada yada, doesn't really matter. But at the time, there was this player called Kiwi who was on the ladder a lot, and their goal was to get as many accounts as they could into the top 500. And regardless of the name, I could always tell who it was by the same freaking team that would steal my lunch money every time I played against them. By the end of the summer, I think they got close to like a dozen alts in the top 500. And I remember thinking at the time, this player was just so godlike and better than me. But, and on the off chance that Kiwi is watching this, understand that it means zero disrespect. But they weren't really like that good. The team, while impressive, wasn't exactly stunning. I don't think it would have had much success in tournament. It was fine for the ladder. And their plays weren't exactly like god tier either. At the end of the day, what it was they were playing this exact same team every single day and got to learn the ins and outs of every possible matchup they could face and had a game plan for every eventuality they came up against. I don't care how good you are, but if you're constantly changing your teams and constantly having to learn what Pokemon counter your own, it's going to be way more difficult to ladder, especially with the variety of teams and playstyles you're going to come up against. No matter how still the meta is, you're always going to be coming against some crazy new Pokemon. Going back to my earlier tip on knowledge, it's way easier to learn the matchups of your 6 Pokemon versus the meta instead of whatever random 6 you threw together versus the same meta. This was a big focus of my lives. Some people complained about it, but I would always use the same team for at least 3 Showdown lives to learn the ins and outs of the team as much as possible and get as much mileage out of them as possible. Tip number 3, take the time to think through your plays. One of the first things I noticed when I started making Pokemon Showdown content is how much better I play when I'm filming a live or I'm streaming. And the reason for that is pretty simple. When I'm playing in front of an audience, I like to explain my thought process and be a bit of an open book to newcomers. And that extra time that I would take to talk through the possible options of every play ended up having a pretty dramatic effect on my own play. Instead of just autopiloting and clicking Earth Power on a Cinderace, I would then slow down and think out loud. Cinderace probably dies to Earth Power. This guy obviously dies to Giga Drain, dies to Weather Ball, to Cinderace. Earth Power seems obvious here. I wonder if he'll go to Corviknight and mess around with me. He got me with that before, and if I'm him, I'm expecting that. I'm gonna do it. Oh, yes. Okay, we finally nailed Corviknight for the first time in history. Does it kill? It does kill. Okay, we're kind of in this. In that clip, taking that extra beat to think through my turn is going to be way more impactful than you think. And I know for a fact that me having to commentate myself was a big reason I laddered up so quickly and so successfully. If you're not the type to do that while on your own, I'd recommend playing on the same account with a friend and discussing your plays, kind of like top Pokemon YouTubers do, because once again, that extra discussion can really make the difference, not to mention it's a lot more fun. With those 3 covered, some of you may be disappointed. These aren't clickbaity 3 easy tips that will instantly make you top 500. They're really just taking it slow and steady and playing patiently if you think about it. And if that's your takeaway from this video, I'd be glad. You know, Rocky didn't become a champion thanks to a flashy 5-minute training montage. Those movies skipped over the hundreds of hours he spent patiently jogging to build his stamina. Improvement is not a race, it's a marathon. So with that said, if you can apply these lessons I've learned to your own play and keep at it, I'm sure you can see some real, substantial progress. Just keep grinding and you'll find yourself climbing that ladder in no time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.